Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, where we sit and read through the Chronicles of Dragonlance, one chapter, two chapters, three chapters at a time, until we finish all of them and then eventually move on to the entirety rest of Dragonlance, hopefully within the next decade or so. I'm one of your hosts, Shivam, and with me as always my dear friend John. Hi, John.
Hey. How's it going? Hey, we're almost done with this. We'll be done with the second book this year, and into the third book. We'll finish it probably in just under a year.
Hope springs eternal.
2026, we're already in Legends, baby.
You know what, though? This has been a lot of fun. Like, when we started this project, we were intending that each episode would be a novel or something like that. But it turns out that the Chronicles are just really fun to read like this. And so I'm having such a blast going through, like, inch by inch through this book.
We didn't really have a plan when we started out.
We did not have a plan at all, actually.
Started reading, and it was just like, I don't know how we're going to cover entire books in podcast episodes unless they're 4 or 5 hours long. And the idea
that's also fair.
The idea is like 5-hour podcast episode is probably going to actually be 8 to 10 hours of recording. I can't imagine sitting here doing this. I can't imagine Shivam doing it. Like, it's impossible.
No, sorry, dude. The later books are not nearly as meaty as these ones are. At least the Chronicles and Legends, there's a lot to talk about, but like, I don't know that we're going to need to do a chapter by chapter for like the Siege of Mount Nevermind or whatever. Like, I think we'll...
Yeah, like the Gully Dwarves book is great, but I don't know if it needs...
Don't you dare talk about the Gully Dwarves book. That is literally my favorite Dragonlance novel of all time.
Out of many Dragonlance books.
There's 3 Dragonlance books that are, out of the entire 220 book series, my all-timers that I will reread and defend for my life. One is Darkness and Light, not because it's the best book of all time, but because I just really, really enjoyed that book and it's had a lot of good memories for me. 2 is Lord Toad, which is hands down the funniest Dragonlance novel ever written. And 3 is The Gully Dwarves, which was about Verdant Leafglow, who is the green dragon that is in a lot of the short stories of Dan Parkinson. And he used the Gully Dwarves novel as kind of the coda to these short stories. And it's about her exploring what it means to be an evil dragon, what it means to be forced into this role by birth, and then just renouncing it and being convinced by a god of neutrality to just give up her evilness and changing from a green dragon to something else entirely. It is one of the most powerful stories in all of Dragonlance, and the Gully Dwarf story itself is super good. It's hella good. I love that book. Don't you dare bring it up in the same voice as like the friggin' companions or whatever. Come on.
Apologies. I didn't know.
Oh, no, I will. There are books that are real bad, like Tales of Uncle Trapsfinger, but there are books that you would think are awful that are actually genius.
You heard it here first, folks. When we get to Gully Dwarves, it will be a year-on read.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. I could go on that book for days. That book changed my philosophy. Man, it was amazing.
But today, we are in Book 3, Chapter 11 of Dragons of Winternight. We're very close to the end here, folks.
Yes. So these are some big deal chapters here, too, because they go and they really start the ramp into the end game here. Things are really starting to happen. So we start here, once again, in the High Clerist Tower. Sturm and Flint are hanging out at the top there. So it's like obvious that Sturm, Laurana, Flint, and Tasselhoff have made it there, because Sturm is describing what Dragon Mountain was like.
This is at the end of, he had just been knighted. His knight ceremony is complete.
Yeah, he's just been knighted, so now he's actually getting a moment to actually talk and hang out. Flint is describing the mountain of silver and whatnot, and Sturm is like, man, of all the things to miss, Huma's tomb, the literal thing I care about more than anything in life.
Yeah.
That does suck that he didn't get to see it.
What do you mean? He doesn't get to see it yet.
Well, he does in the future past, when in the later books, when finally Margaret and Tracy, Human's not dead at that point though. So anyways.
So Flint is saying, hey, we should all leave here. Flint's trying to convince Sturm that he should take Laurana and Taz and they should get out of here because this is, it's like a no-win situation. Sturm disagrees. He says, no, with the 300 odd knights and our accompanying soldiers, we have enough to hold if we can get our supply lines up. If Palanthas or the Knights of Solamnia can create some sort of supply line, then we can hold this. They're interrupted by Derek, who, as we recall from last time,
is completely crazy.
Remember, the High Terrace Tower is now an armed camp where the various orders of the knights are walking around hating each other. None of his followers showed up to the knighting of Sturm. In fact, I think Derek sees Sturm's knighting as like a direct insult to him and his goals.
Oh, it is 100%.
So he shows up, and what does he say here?
You and Gunther believe you've defeated me, Derek said, but you haven't. By one heroic act, I will have the knights in my palm. Derek held out his mailed hand, his armor flashing in the firelight, and you and Gunther will be finished. Slowly, he clenched his fist. I was under the impression our war was out there with the dragon armies, Sturm said. Don't give me that self-righteous twaddle, Derek snarled. Enjoy your knighthood, Brightblade. You paid enough for it. What promise did you make the elf woman in return for her lies? Marriage? Make a respectable woman out of her? Oh my god, Derek.
This is some gross stuff.
Yeah, dude, what are you implying here? Or not even implying, just saying straight up.
It says a lot of things about Derek, that he doesn't see elves as people. He doesn't see women as their actors in their own sense, as people who can make their own decisions and act as they see, that you can be friends with women, that you could be friends with elves. I think this says a lot about how sheltered Derek's life is, and gross.
Yeah. My guy here is definitely representing an ideology of deep misogyny and like just selfishness, right? Like everything Derek stands for is about enhancing his own power and his own prestige. And he refused to believe that anybody else would be acting out of charity.
He thinks everyone else is acting in the same way. So
yeah,
he takes everything as a loss, right? If he gains something, then by definition, you must have lost something, and vice versa. Like,
it's a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah, he doesn't see Sturm as becoming a knight as a win for him and all knights. He sees, oh, Sturm got a knighthood, so I lost something.
Yeah.
That's not the way to grow a healthy organization.
He's the type of guy who does not understand what altruism is, right? Like, he doesn't understand the idea of working for other people for the betterment of society, which is Sturm's whole entire modus operandi. Obviously, they were set for a clash from the beginning, and we're there now. Sturm is like, even now, I am bound by the measure and can't fight you. Turns around, and Derek's like, don't walk away from me, because he's looking for a fight.
Yeah. And he puts his hands on Sturm, right? He turns him around.
Mm-hmm. And Sturm is about to slug him, and Flint is like, and he grabs his hand and pulls him down.
And then he says, you're finished, Brightblade. Tomorrow, I'm leading the knights onto the field. No more skulking in this miserable rock prison. By tomorrow night, my name will be legend.
I mean, it will be.
And Sturm says to him softly, you're mad? There are thousands of them. They'll cut you to ribbons. And he's like, yes, that's what you'd like to see, isn't it? Derek sneered. Be ready at dawn, Brightblade.
Yeah, this dude, he's...
I think we said last episode that the knights just aren't able to cope with this moment. And he still doesn't see it.
No, they are the wrong people at the wrong time.
Sturm is like pointing to the giant army outside. And he's saying, shouldn't we be fighting them? And Derek's like, you'd like me to think hordes of invading dragon people are the real problem. But no, I, Derek, know that the real problem
is you.
Is this petty squabble with you, Sturm, and with Gunther.
Yeah, you standing in my way is the problem here.
And Sturm's not even standing in the way. Sturm doesn't care about the politics. He would have happily gone along with it.
Yeah. He's like, you want it? Dude, you be the king. I don't care. We just got to protect the town. And he's like, no, screw it. I'm here for me. And you, if you're not here for me, then you're against me, right? Like,
Derek's plan is to just take his small group and run into an army of thousands.
Yeah, like, I don't know if I used this analogy before, but there was a time I was watching Downton Abbey. And in Downton Abbey, there's like, it leads into World War I. And in part of that, like, the Lord Downton guy himself and like all the people who are of his age, like elderly men who fought in like, the war in the 1800s or something, they all get together with their old uniforms and go to the club and are like, all right, guys, I'm here and ready to sign up for war. And all the other old men are just like wearing the uniforms and drinking and stuff. It's like, war? We're not here for war. War's for the, younger people. We're just here to hang out. Now chill out and sit down. And it's like, you could tell these are not the people for the moment. They're not meeting the moment where it needs to be. And this is like, this knighthood has had effective peacetime for like 300 years, minus some random skirmishes or whatever, in just trying to keep their own noses clean. And suddenly they've got this horde in front of them.
And haven't they mostly been ignored by the people who follow them? Like the Solamnic Knights aren't really prized and respected anymore.
No, nobody loves, except for like the serfs who live on the land. Basically, no, nobody likes them or appreciates them at all. They're just kind of like,
Even the people who live in like the big city are just like, we don't need you.
no, yeah, they're like, we're going to make our own deal. You guys are like here. Thanks for your service, I guess. Bye. But it's like, yeah, the Lord City of Palanthas, all of like Solamnia is a nation in name only, in the sense that there's a bunch of cultural city states that are connected historically. And it's not the people in Karagoth or the people in like, Solanthas don't care about the people in Palanthas and vice versa. And they're just like all, I mean, they speak the same language, they're the same culture, but they're all independent entities. Because like Solamnia doesn't even get a king until very late. Like it was run sort of by a council of knights, but it was like feudal times and communications all falling apart. So nobody's actually talking. So like the knights, their purpose of holding this nation together has failed. So they're still there vestigially.
They're cosplaying as the rulers of a country that has pretty much moved on from them.
Yeah, like they get their taxes and they get their tithes, and that's kind of it. There's nothing like there's no need for a defense against other countries because people are just too busy trying to survive. And so now that an army is actually at their door, these guys only have like 400-year-old manuals telling them what to do, and they're like, "Oh, we have to actually fight."
And they only have an army of like 300 knights.
Yeah,
The majority of the knights came with them.
like knights and like a bunch of whatever conscripts they can dig up, and none of these guys have any kind of actual on the field training, you know?
Or experience, yeah.
Yeah, or experience. They're just like, you want me to actually kill someone?
Like I get the feeling when they met Derek in Tarsus,
Hmm.
Derek and the other two knights were on an adventure,
Yeah,
but they didn't seem to be very good at said adventuring.
yeah.
Like they couldn't even get through Tarsus. They couldn't even find what they were looking for in Tarsus. They needed actual adventurers with experience in the world's help to do that part. And I guess when I read the Lost Chronicles, we'll see probably, I'm going to guess even more so, that the knights are kind of helpless or hapless.
Hmm.
Not helpless, because clearly they know how to fight. They have the technical expertise of like, I know how to hold a sword and I can go through the motions, but it just seems that they're not really able to do it because they don't have the real world experience.
Exactly that.
Certainly reinforced by the end of these two chapters.
I'm not saying they don't know how to fight, but they're kind of just like,
It's all book learning.
yeah, exactly. Like they've skirmished with each other and stuff, but like maybe they've fought some goblin raiders or something. That's different than an actual trained army of evil that is standing here.
There are no veterans. There's no campaigning experience. None of that they don't seem to have.
Like, think about it like this: Sturm is one of the highest ranking knights because he's fought a few things. Like, come on, it's kind of ridiculous. The scene shifts, and we see Tasselhoff doing what Kenders do best, which is being bored and going and exploring the High Clerist Tower. So the High Clerist Tower, obviously, this is where we get like a big old info dump of the tower itself and how it's like this big octagonal shaped fortress that is plopped in the middle of the pass on the way to Palanthas, and the tower gets narrower, it gets to the top. As we learn in the modules, the top, like the third floor and higher or so, are sealed off from the lower floors, and inside there are all the ghosts of the people who died during the cataclysm, who protected this tower, including the former High Clerist himself, who's at the top playing a forever game of chess with one of his buddies.
Oh, is that in the modules?
Yeah,
You can explore the tower higher up and it's full of ghosts.
you can explore the tower, yeah, and you see him playing Kos with his friends.
Oh, very cool.
But the bottom floor of the tower where Taz is exploring is this very weird shape where it's got three gigantic doors that kind of like Flint mentions, like there's three huge doors that point directly into the heart of the tower, which is like the least defensible design of all time. And they like, there's these long tunnels, and Taz is exploring and he's just seeing like, oh, there's an octagon inside of an octagon, big steel doors, and then three sets of doors that come down, and the inner one's got a small hole in the center of it that's just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, so these big doors lead into big chambers that end with like a portcullis
Mm-hmm.
that goes into a slightly smaller door that they have all these big spikes in them.
Mm-hmm.
Spikes as in a person could hide behind the spike. And then that ends in another portcullis that goes into a smaller room that's now very narrow, still has the spikes. And then there's a final portcullis with a hole in the center of it. And then beyond that, there's a steel door. And then beyond that, there's a central chamber. It's very odd. If you have one of the atlases or the modules with maps, those will be very helpful. I'll be posting those probably too from the Dragoness Atlas, because I think it helps
Visualize.
the pictures really do help you understand. And later chapters also help understand, because once we actually see the tower in action, it does make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But right now, it's very confusing.
Here's the thing that's funny. When we were working on the new Dragonlance novels with Margaret and Tracy, Margaret came to me and was like, okay, I need to know about the High Clerist Tower. What did it look like before the Cataclysm and in the Huma's time or whatever? And we're talking about it. And I'm like, well, according to the sources we have, Venus Solemnis had a vision and built the tower like this. And she's like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'm like, yeah, it really is. Because, what the hell? How is he going to have a vision of 2,000 years from now? You're going to need to have this exact design or else it's going to fail. And so she's like, that's not going to work because that's stupid and hacked and very 80s, very cliche style. And I was like, well, you wrote it. But but then she's like, okay, well, help me figure this out. What would this tower have looked like otherwise before, if we were going to have obviously having a tower in the past going to Palanthas is smart. It's, strategically sound to have a big knight's outpost and have their headquarters here, because it's the High Clerist Tower. So this is the administrative headquarters of the knights. It's the tower of the sword order. It's also just where all of basically this is their Pentagon, right? This is the actual place where they do all the decision, all the strategy outside of Palanthas.
It is very weird.
Yeah.
Because it's not really centrally located.
Well, yeah.
The edition that actually holds all the soldiers and stuff is post Cataclysm, it sounds like. It's on the side after the Cataclysm. That's where everyone's staying.
The spur was there before too. It's they have the big tower for all the clerics, the administrators and stuff, and then they have the barracks that are kind of attached to it. And she was like, okay, well, what would this be otherwise? And I sat there, I'm like, these guys are paladins. They are knights of God in their central fortress. Why would the bottom floors not be a literal temple to the deities of the knighthood, who, because it's a High Clerist tower. He's the cleric on top of being the clerk, right? So obviously in his tower, you're going to have the religious component of the night, the administrative components of the night, and you want to have all of the people have a pilgrimage site, for the, locals and for the citizenry that the knights are leading, to be able to have a place they can go to. So I said, hey, you should build this bottom floor to be a temple to the gods of the knights, with Paladine, Kirijolith, Habakkuk, Brunchala, whatever, these gods in these little temples in these naves inside this big auditorium, where you can pray to all of them at once and have Paladine and the holy family of Paladine and Mishkal in the front and so forth. You could even design them, because I was thinking, what would it look like in a Hindu temple of a polytheistic culture? You got the divine god and his consort, you got the children around them. It just made sense. And she was like, that is so good. And so we rebuilt the thing to be a temple of peace and a temple of for the knights to have their worship and their because think about it, the knights are going to have their vigils and their moments of we're anointing people, so we've got to have this. And that would have been before the Huma's wars, and then after Huma, when all the dragons come and attack and everything, these guys would see the need to reconfigure this building to prepare itself to deal with dragons, which were not a combat issue before.
And it also says they had to have an orb, which means at some point they must have worked with the wizards, the mages.
Right, because of who's Huma's best friend? Magus, right? So they have this whole thing with the orb in the middle, but they hide it because they don't want to prove that they're actually working with mages, with wizards. That's gross. Why would they do that? The new trilogy is all about Huma and the knights and everything defending the Tower of the High Clerist against Takesis and her minions. It gives you a more grounded vibe of why would we need to change this to look like it does in Winter Night.
In Winter Night, it definitely looks like something as in, I designed a cool dungeon for my party of my friends to go through, and now we need to create a narrative structure for why and how it works. It's a very cool dungeon for your game.
It is exactly that.
In what kind of world would it be built this way? Yeah.
Because that's the thing, is like you see that in a lot of game design where it's like early game design is like, oh, I'm jumping on this platform, it's floating in the middle of nowhere. Later game design is like, why the hell is there a platform floating there? Is it attached to something? What's going on? Everything should have a purpose, right? So, for instance, this is what Hickman said in the Annotated Chronicles. The original design for the High Clerist Tower was a gargantuan structure of immense complexity and detail. Every consideration was given to its defense, particularly against dragons. Indeed, the interior structure was designed specifically to combat dragons. As my wife and I envisioned it in the game, the tower itself was haunted by spectral revelers whose souls were trapped in an eternal celebration of death. The knights seemed to never penetrate too far into the interior of the tower in the book, but it's probably just as well for them that they did not. Yeah, like in the book, you have like it's a dungeon. It's a huge dungeon. It takes up the whole module of DL7 or 8 or whatever, and it's really sick. Basically, I was tasked with, okay, how does this work? Toot my own horn here. I think it was a very elegant solution to combine what the knights are and what they ended up with. You know, I thought it was really cool. So Taz is going in there and he's exploring. As he gets all the way to the end and he's using his lockpicks and stuff, and he sees this, this room with what looks like a fountain in the middle. It's like a sacred place. It's super dusty, and it just looks like an old, empty fountain. And I'm like, okay, fine. I guess they could somewhere be there. But then he goes and walks over, and he dusts it off, and he sees that there's a stand. There's a big, like, marble plinth or whatever, and on top of that is this slender three-legged stand. And then he looks at that, and this strand's got this weird round top. He blows the dust off, looks real closely, and then he drops his torch.
This is great. Oh no, Taz groaned, diving into another pouch. He pulled out a handkerchief and rubbed the object. The dust came off easily, and he knew now what it was. Drat, he said in despair. I was right. Now what do I do?
Drat. Oh, shucks. Here we are.
And then it cuts to the next morning.
Yeah.
Sun's not up yet. Courtyard's already busy. There's hundreds of knights mounted on horses, preparing for battle. There's 100 footmen lining up for battle as well. Sturm, Laurana, and Lord Alfred are there, and they're watching as Lord Derek moves among the knights. He seems happy. He's in good spirits. Sturm tries to tell Alfred, we have to stop him. But Alfred's like, oh, there's nothing we can do by the measure, which makes me think the measure doesn't sound like it's actually a great manual for organizing people. Most good manuals have ways of removing crazy people from the chain of command, right?
You would think that over the thousands of years the knighthood's been around, they would have had bad commanders who need to be removed.
Yeah, and there would have been some sort of formal method for removing people.
Alfred is also kind of a pushover. Alfred is definitely the type of guy who's just I don't want to do the work. It feels like there would have been a way to because obviously you can court martial and you can get rid of people. And he's like, yeah, but the measure lets him just kind of boss us around and destroy things. No, dude, it doesn't just let him drive you to death.
Alfred says oh, I can't do anything. I'm bound by the measure. I already pleaded with Derek in private, but he won't hold it off.
Yeah.
And Derek thinks that he can the knights in the field challenging the dragon armies will make them retreat. He's like, what do you mean they have 1,000? 1,000 goblins is nothing to one knight.
Yeah. They mention, 50 to 1, we held off the goblin and ogre wars 100 years ago. And it's well, I guess, but they're not draconians, right? They're not.
That was 100 years ago. Are any of those veterans of that savage war here? Do you know any of their tactics?
Also, randomly, there's never been a book, novel, or short story at all about the Goblin and Ogre Wars of 100 years ago. This is a random throwaway line that shows up nowhere.
Oh, it's never been followed up on, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. Tracy is the Goblin Ogre Wars are perhaps the least chronicled of the conflicts in Krynn, particularly due to the fact that the human historian's primary interest in the war was not so much related to who won, but how effective both sides were in killing each other. The outcome was something of a stalemate, but it managed to keep peace in the human communities for quite some time. So even then, they didn't even win.
And Sturm tries to tell him, Draconians aren't goblins. Even, they're smart, they're tactical, and even when you kill them, random bad stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
They're magical beings. Derek just cuts him off and says, look, I've made the decision. Wake your men up and let's go. Here's where Sturm throws the measure away.
Yeah, I love this. And Sturm's like, I'm not going, and I'm not ordering my men to go either. Derek is pale with fury, but even Alfred's like, I beg your pardon? He's like, Sturm, do you know what you're doing? Sturm's like, yeah, my lord. We're the only thing between the dragon armies and Palanthas. We dare not leave this garrison unmanned. I'm keeping my command here. And Derek's like, disobeying a direct order? You're a witness, Lord Alfred. I have his head this time. And Alfred's like, you can't just say no. That's like, you're not allowed to say no.
That's some interesting foreshadowing, I think, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Derek says, you heard Lord Alfred. I'll have his head this time.
Oh, poor Alfred. But this is really clever, though. In the end, Sturm gives his men a choice. They could stay with him at no risk to themselves, since they were simply obeying the orders of a commanding officer, or they could accompany Derek. It was, he mentioned, the same choice that Vinus Solamnus had given his men long ago when the knights rebelled against the corrupt Emperor of Urgoth. The men did not need to be reminded of this legend. They saw it as a sign, and with Solamnus, most of them chose to stay with the commander that they had come to respect and admire. That's interesting right there. That like these guys are basically like, you know what, we are going to just coup.
Well, I mean, they're not cooing. They're not trying to take over.
No, but they're just like, we're going to directly disobey.
Yeah. Lord Alfred tries to convince Sturm to come with them at the end, right? They're all mounting up. His men are now joined with Derek's men. Sturm, Lord Derek's right. The dragon armies have not been trained, not like the knights. There's every probability we'll rout them with barely a blow being struck. Do they not know that like the dragon armies have already conquered multiple cities, that there are thousands of them?
You know, it's one thing to know that and another thing to believe that.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they're like, of course, like Abyssinia fell. There are no soldiers in Abyssinia. Who cares? Oh, yeah, the weak elves fell. Of course they fell. They're elves. They're not knights.
Lord Alfred gets mad at Sturm because he's like, Sturm basically says, hey, if you want to die, that's your choice, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Lord Alfred's like, if we're defeated, what will you gain by staying here? You couldn't hold off an army of gully dwarves with your small contingent of men. Suppose the roads do open up. You won't be able to hold the tower long enough for Palanthas to send reinforcements. It's a weird argument to say, hey, you might as well come and die with us because you'll just die a couple days later. Like, that's not a winning argument, Lord Alfred.
I'm not feeling this one. And even Sturm's like, yeah, that's kind of spurious. Derek comes by and he's like, according to the measure, I charge you with conspiracy. And Sturm is finally like, to hell with the measure. You know, Where's the measure gotten us? Divided, jealous, and crazed. Even our own people prefer to treat with the armies of our enemies. The measure has failed. And everybody is suddenly like, and then, of course, Derek is right there. He's just like, pray for my death, Sturm Brightblade, Derek said softly, or by the gods, I'll slit your throat at your execution myself. And it's like, oh.
Is that how they do executions? That seems weird.
I feel like Derek would ask for an exemption just to principle of the thing. And so they all get together, the Derek and Alfred's groups. They blow their horns, they open the doors, give a knight salute, and gallop forward. The knights behind them picked up their ringing challenge and rode out into the fields where, long ago, Huma had ridden to glorious victory, which is why Margaret wanted to retell that story. Alfred's about to say something to Sturm, but then he shakes his head and rides away. Sturm stands expressionless in the center of the courtyard as the doors close and scene ends. And then, of course, we go to the last scene of this chapter. Back in the Dragon Armies camp, Bakaris, who is Kitiara's other boyfriend, is there. And the scout comes up to him and is like, excuse me, the knights are on the field? And he's like, are you sure? Like, why would they do that?
He's not flustered or excited at all. He's taking this all in stride.
Yeah. The scout's like, I saw them, hundreds on horseback, javelins and swords, 1,000 footmen. Bakaris is like, oh, she was right. The fools have made their mistake. So he calls for his servants, he gets everything ready, and gets his dragons and his armies to come out to handle business.
This is great. He says, too bad, he reflected coolly as he walked away. The fight will probably be over by the time she gets the news. A pity. She would have wanted to be present at the fall of the High Clerist Tower. Still, he reflected, perhaps tomorrow night we'll sleep in Palanthas. She and I.
Oh, buddy. So there's Lord Derek's charge, and we are off to the running into the climactic moments of this novel here. But before we get to the next chapter, We want to thank all of you for listening and for joining us on this journey through Dragons of Winter Night and Dragons of Autumn Twilight and soon Spring Dawning. And if you want to support the podcast, leave a positive review, share it with your friends. Word of mouth is really the best way to go. Tell your friends on Twitter and Blue Sky and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok that we're here doing this show. And you can also join us at our Patreon at patreon.com/Chronicles of Dragonlance Podcast. Get access to our Discord, get the show a week early, get the show notes and everything. As always, we would like to shout out to our $5 patrons of Alexander Lewis, Nicholas Campos, Wardango, Chris Andrew, Jason Bledsoe, Brandon Brown, John Molina Jr., Jan Newhoff, Andrew Arsenault, Todd Fisher, Iskender Bilge, Matthew Williams, Ken Don, Eric Schuld, Paresh Patel, Robert Fisher, Tom Bertram, Scott William, The Nine Duncan, Iliad Tulak, and Adam Squires. Wow, these lists get longer every time, and I love that. I'm so grateful to all of you for your support. It's going to get to a point where we're not going to be able to just read these in the middle because it's going to take like forever. And it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Thanks so much for all the support, everyone. We really appreciate it. It's just Shivam and I doing this, and we have full-time jobs and families outside of this. So the support, monetary and emotionally, and having discussions with you on the Discord has really been great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's super fun. Chapter 12, Death on the Plains, Tassilov's Discovery. So now we're moving to the next day, or rather noon of the same day. Is it noon of the same day?
It is noon of the same day.
Yeah, because the knights are on the battlements and they're staring out across the plains trying to see what's going on. And they watch the
armies met. The knights strained to see, but a misty gray veil crept across the land. The air became tainted with a foul smell like hot iron. The myth grew thicker, almost totally obscuring the sun. Is this magic? Like, what is this? Or is it just like, does this field usually get covered in stinky gas? Or is it never explained?
Yeah, it feels like fog combined with like just the smell of war. This is kind of a weird one. It feels like it's not noon, but it's more like late afternoon or something. But it could very well be magic because the bad guys have a lot of magic users, and they also have dragons who are breathing fire and ice and lightning.
I don't think they have dragons yet.
Well, they have wyverns and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not really told, but they are in the mountains. It seems weird that there would be a fog in the middle of the day.
It is winter, so maybe it's just like a storm, and they are in the mountains, so it's coming through the pass. It's just like a big storm. But
I mean, it could have already been a cloudy day to begin with.
Yeah. It does make it so that they can't actually see what's happening in the battle.
Yeah.
Laurana and Taz are waiting in her room, but she notices there's a messenger approaching Sturm. And so she says, come on, let's go. We have to be, we want to know what's happening. And she notices that Taz seems quiet and indifferent.
Oh, hang on a second. So I go back to the last chapter a second, and it said the sun rose red the next morning, glimmering through the haze of smoke hovering above the dragon armies. So it's all the campfires and all the stuff they've got is already making for a super hazy day. And like when it's cold, you know how we get bear the air alerts here in California?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably like that, where there's just a lot of particulate matter in the air.
Okay. And probably with the armies moving, they're going to kick up a bunch of dust too. So
yeah,
weather conditions and the existing.
That makes sense now.
She notices Taz is like not his usual cheery self. And she's like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, it's just this crappy weather.
But I do like that, like, a servant brought her the bit of maggoty bread and dried meat that was her ration for the day. It must only be mid-afternoon, she realized. Yeah, I mean, they are under siege, so there's like no food. They sit there and they see that there's like a messenger has come from Palanthas or somewhere. And Taz is like, meh, this air sucks. Laurana goes to Sturm to find out what's going on. And Sturm's like, yeah, good news. I guess the road to Palanthas is open. The snow melted enough for them to get through. And he's like about to say, like, look, I've got a messenger ready to go there in case we're defeated. But he cuts himself off and he says, I want you to leave. And he talks to Laurana and he's like, I need you to go back to Palanthas with the messenger. Get out of here. And Laurana is like, she's been expecting this and she was prepared. But now that it's time to talk about it, she couldn't say anything. The bitter air dried her mouth. Her tongue, it seemed swollen. And she's like, no, that's not it. She's frightened. Admit it. She wanted to go back to Palanthas. She wanted to get out of this grim place where the death lurked in the shadows. And then she like sits and like beats herself up for a second and goes like, no, I'm staying here, Sturm. I know what you're going to say. So listen to me first. You're going to need all the skill fighters you can get. And you know my worth. And Sturm's like, yeah, she's a trained swordsman. She's battle tested. something he couldn't say about many of the young knights under his command. Yeah, he nodded in agreement and meant to send her away anyhow, right?
She mentions, I'm the only one who knows how to use a dragon lance. And he's like, I don't think that's going to matter. We haven't even seen dragons yet. They're south of us, fighting for control of Belgard.
But it's funny because, like, Sturm's like, Flint's been trained, and Laurana stares at the dwarf, and the dwarf's like, I'm short.
She finally just says, I'm staying regardless. That's what Tanis would do. And he blows up at her. It's like, you got to stop thinking about Tanis. He's like, I can't be Tanis. You can't be Tanis. He isn't here.
Live your own life.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Sturm saying live your own life. That is something that Sturm would never have said before.
Well, he's having a lot of crises. He's always believed that the measure and the code were going to make his life easier, so he knew what to do. And now in these tough times, in these hard situations, he's learning that they can fail, that you can't just do what the measure says.
Yeah.
Because it could be the wrong decision, right?
Yeah, he's like his actual, within the past 2 days, his entire philosophical grounding in life has been uprooted. And so he's got to figure out, like, he's like, no, screw this. You need to get out to safety. I wish the guy who has all the answers was here, but he's not here either.
This is so funny because we know in earlier chapters of the book where Tanis has said, why do these people keep asking me for answers? Why do they keep looking? Like, this is the leader's dilemma.
Yeah, right.
Is that people look to you and they expect you to have the answer, and you kind of just have to wing it.
And then you're like, who do I look to? And there's no one to look to.
You're just winging it, and you have to be okay with it. That's what the leaders do, is they kind of wing it sometimes, and you hope, using your knowledge and your insight and the seat of your pants, you got to make a decision.
One of my favorite Robert Jordan quotes from the Wheel of Time books is that the best battle plan lasts until the first arrow leaves the bow. And then it's all bets are off, right? Like, you can plan and plot and think all you want, but eventually you're just going to have to act on your own volition. And when you're the boss, your volition, you are the only one who can help you, right?
So Sturm gets mad. He has the snap, and then he apologizes to her. She says, look, it's okay. And he said, no, I have to send you away. Tanis would never forgive me if anything happened to you. And then she says, yes, he would. Laurana answered softly. He would understand. He told me once that there comes a time when you've got to risk your life for something that means more than life itself. Don't you see, Sturm? If I fled to safety, leaving my friends behind, he would say he understood, but deep inside he wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is so far from what he would do himself. Besides, she smiled, even if there were no Tanis in this world, I still could not leave my friends. Interesting things happening here. Laurana is being the woman that Tanis said he wanted her to be in order to have a relationship with her. When he said that, he said, look, you got to do things because they're more important than life itself. If I fled safely, leaving my friends, he wouldn't, because it's so far from what he would do himself. But 2 chapters back, we see Tanis doing things that are so far from himself. Tanis is not following his own advice here. Tanis is being less of what he expects Laurana to be, and Laurana is meeting those expectations.
That's the thing, that when you read these books, you realize that the actual hero of the story is Laurana. Laurana is the single best member of the entire companions of the Lance, right? Like, she's the only one who's actually got growth and development and actually turns into a better person at the end. Tanis eventually finds his way, and he is like great character, but like Sturm's ego is here, Raceland's ego, Caramon's codependency, all the other people have problems. Laurana's the only one who's like, no, I got to man up and I got to handle my business. She rules. She is so sick, especially like later on, if we ever get to talk about the short stories, the Vingard campaign where she actually runs with the dragons. I mean, we'll talk about it when we get to Spring Dawning because they'll be part of it. And then out of nowhere, in this poignant moment, Taz comes by and bursts into tears. They're all like, Taz, what's going on? And he's like, it's my fault. I broke one. Am I doomed to go around the world breaking these things? And Sturm's like, calm down. What the hell are you talking about?
What is going on?
And he's like, I found another one, Taz blubbered, down below in the big empty chamber. Another what, you doorknob? Flint said in exasperation. Another dragon, or Taz wails. And they're just like, what the hell? And suddenly now it's nightfall. They all get torches. And then near midnight, They hear the jingle of harnesses, not the victorious shouts of their comrades or the flat, blaring horns of the enemy, but soft whinnying of horses approaching the fortress. They rush down, they shine torches down into the fog. The horse hoofbeats come to a stop, and Sturm stands on the grate, and he's like, "Who's coming?" Laurana, who can see into the dark, stares down and feels her knees grow weak and grabs a stone wall to support herself. And the rider who's down there, who holds a flaming torch, is dressed in the shining armor of an officer in the dragon army, a blonde guy with cold, cruel features, and they always have cold, cruel features.
Is this Bakaris?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it says like, oh, he's blonde, he's good looking.
Yeah. And he's got a second horse here, across which were thrown two bodies, one headless and both bloodied and mutilated. "I brought back your officers," the man said, his voice harsh and blaring. "One is quite dead, as you can see. The other, I believe, still lives, or he did when I started my journey. I hope he is still living, so that he can recount to you what took place upon the field of battle today. If you could even call it a battle." He's like, all of the knights are suddenly starting to get really reared up here, and he's like, "Yeah, you can kill me now. I'm a fine target, but you won't. You're a knight of Solamnia." And his sarcasm is sharp. He's like, "And your honor is your life. You wouldn't shoot an unarmed man returning the bodies of your leaders." He gave the ropes a yank, and the headless body slides to the ground. The officer drags the other body off the saddle. He tosses his torch down into the snow next to them, and it sizzles and goes out. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll give you till the morning to surrender. When the sun rises, lower your flag, and the dragon Heartlord will deal with you mercifully." And as he's giving this speech, suddenly there's a twang of a bow, a thunk of an arrow, and it's striking into flesh. And basically, Laurana yells out there, and she's like, "Hey, guess what? I'm not a knight. I don't have this oath and measure stuff. I will kill you because you know I can see you, and I am really good shot. I shot your arm because I wanted to. If I want to, I could shoot your forehead."
And she's like, "You'll probably never be able to use that arm quite as well ever again." Sturm says, "That's our answer."
Yeah, Sturm's like, "We'll be cold in death before we lower our flag." And the officer's like, "Suit yourself, buddy." He runs off. So they go out there, and then Sturm orders the bodies brought in, and they grab a bunch of the knights, go in there, grab them. And the headless knight is basically wearing the ring of Lord Alfred Markennan, who is now lying dead in the ground, whose head was had by Derek.
The other is Lord Derek.
And one of the young knights is like, "He's still alive." Sturm walks over and to where Derek is, and the Lord's face is white, his eyes wide and glittering feverishly. Blood caked his lips, and his skin was clammy. One of the young knights supporting him held a cup of water, but Derek wouldn't drink, or couldn't drink, right? Sturm sees that Derek's lifeblood is pouring out of his stomach, so he's been wounded real badly.
Yeah, he's got a bad stomach wound.
Yeah, he's basically dead. Derek starts ranting. He grabs Sturm's hand and he's like, "Victory! They ran before us. We pursued. It was glorious, glorious. And I'll be Grand Master." And he chokes and blood spews from his mouth. The young knight who's holding Derek looks up at Sturm and is like, "Do you think he's right?"
Maybe that was a ruse.
Yeah. And then he looks at Sturm's face and he looks at Derek and he's like, "Oh, he's mad, isn't he?" And Sturm's like, "Look, he's dying bravely, like a true knight." And then Derek's like, "Victory!" And then he dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, get wrecked, buddy.
Even he never realized that he made a mistake. He drove himself mad, and then he failed.
He was completely lost in the sauce, and his ego led him to his death. That is like the tale we are told in all the Hindu legends, which is basically like, look, if you put your own pride and your own like position and your own ego above everything else, you die in battle. That's what happens, and you lose. It's a fitting coda for Derek after all of this craziness. But it's also kind of bittersweet, right? Because like Sturm is still now left with 1/3 of a battalion in this tower, and the dragon armies are still out there.
If Derek had had his comeuppance, that would have been fine. But because of the nature of leadership,
he dragged everybody else with him.
He took 2/3 of the army with him, right? Because he was insane.
Yeah.
These are the only two who remain. So that means the rest are dead in the field or dying. They're not going to.
Yeah, like this is war. They were left, right? Like, who cares? Because like the dragon armies are not. They're interested in dropping off the leaders because that's a philosophical. That's like a point they're trying to make. Dropping off random, like they're like, "You want your bodies? Come get them."
Yeah,
they're not going to respect the rules of war or anything.
The scene changes again here. Taz and Laurana talking, and Taz is like, "I have to break it again."
Yeah, and Laurana's like, "No, you mustn't break it."
They're in that innermost chamber where the orb is at the bottom of the tower.
Yeah. Laurana and Taz are standing in front of it. Fizban said, and Laurana's like, "I know what he said. It's not Evil, it's not good. It isn't everything. It isn't anything. It's everything. And she's like, that, and she mutters, is so like Fizzband to be totally useless. They're standing there staring at this thing. Laurana's staring at it, and she's like, these orbs have to work, Taz. They were created by powerful magic users, people like Raceland who don't tolerate failure. If only we knew how. And Taz's like, I know how. She's like, what? You know? How do you know? Why didn't you? I didn't know I knew, so to speak, Taz stammered. It just came to me. Nosh the gnome told me he discovered writing inside the orb, letters that twirled around the mist. He couldn't read them because they're written in some sort of strange magic. The language of magic. Yeah, that's what I said. But that won't help us. We can't either of us speak it. If only Raceland. And Taz's like, we don't need Raceland. I can't speak it, but I can read it. You see, I have these glasses. Glasses of true seeing, Raceland called them. They let me read languages, even the language of magic. I know because he said if he caught me reading any of his scrolls, he'd turn me into a cricket and swallow me whole.
Why not turn him into a grape or something pleasantly to eat? Like,
I don't know. There's something about him turning people into crickets that's just funny. Interesting. One of my favorite short stories is actually about the Glass of True Seeing and Dalamar using a young Dalamar when he was early exiled, using them to get stuff. But anyways, that's in, I think, Love and War.
I didn't realize that magic had its own language.
Well, yeah, like
I just thought it was written in different languages. But yeah, now there is a secret magic language.
whenever they cast spells like As Tasak Tas whatever, or Dumak and Shirak, yeah, they're basically using Indonesian, but because that's what Tracy learned on his mission.
That's the language Tracy knows and is not well known outside of, right? Especially when he was writing this.
Not a lot of people speak Bahasa Indonesia in the West, right? So
yeah,
he used that as a basis for his. And it's funny because like in the beginning he's just using phrases and stuff, and later on they're just doing full on paragraphs in like Bahasa. But yeah, it's fine. Laurana's like, so what? You think you can read it? And Taz's like, I can try. But Laurana, Sturm said there probably wouldn't be any dragons. Why should we risk using it? And Laurana grabs him and she's like, listen to me, Taz, Burfoot. If they bring even one dragon here, we're finished. That's why they gave us time to surrender instead of just storming the place. They must be using the extra time to bring in dragons. We gotta take this chance, right? And Tasselhoff remembers that Fizzband told him there's a dark and a light path that he could use. Death of those you love, but you have the courage. And so Taz reaches into the pocket of his fleecy vest, pulls out these glasses, which we are told elsewhere are octagonal glasses with wire rims, and puts the wire rims over his pointed ears. And the chapter ends.
And next month, we'll have chapter 13 and probably the last episode for Winter Night, starting with The Sun Rises, Darkness Descends.
Yeah, we are getting into, I mean, we're at the end, man. This is the fight.
This is it.
This is the Empire Strikes Back of Dragonlance. Everything is bad, but it has to get bad for the sun to come back up in spring dawning, so we'll see where it goes.
Perfect follow of the seasons, right? We had autumn where things are getting bad. Here we are in winter. It's dark. The plants are dead. The earth is cold. And then the next book is spring dawning. New life, new hope.
The naming of this was so good. The arc of the seasons is so good. And like, I've always loved the symbolism of it. And I love the color of the books being red to blue to green. And I mean, that's why Summer Flame was awesome. But it made me sad that the flame part of it had nothing to do with the dawn, day, night, whatever.
Oh, it didn't fit into the...
No, it doesn't fit into the cycle, but it is the season. We'll get there when we get there, but it's a good time. In the meantime, thank you all for listening to the Chronicles of Dragonlance. I've been Shivam, with me, John. And we'll see you all next month for the conclusion to Dragon of Winter Night.
Thanks so much, everyone. You can find our Facebook group accounts, Blue Sky accounts, and other Discord links in the show notes. Shivam, right before we go, you want to talk about your other two podcasts?
Oh, yeah. You can also find me on Shivam and Wheeler Love Magic or the Casual Magic, the two podcasts I do besides this one. But yeah, it's good times. Talk to you all later.
Thanks, everyone.
By one heretic act, not heretic. Sorry, I thought I would heard an echo.